Good evening and welcome to Crescent Research Center's expert interview series. Today we will discuss Austria's role at the crossroads of diplomacy, energy security, focusing on the broader economic and strategic implications for Europe. And it is my pleasure to introduce our today's distinguished guest, Dr. Hannes Swoboda. He is the president of the International Institute for Peace, Vienna. Thank you for being with us today, Dr. Swoboda.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be here.
Great. We could start with our first question. So, as you know, the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is in Vienna, plays a central role in monitoring Iran's nuclear program. How effective was their mission in Iran, and what role it may play in case of future ceasefire?
Well, it was effective, I think, but basically the open issue always is if you don't know where some material, for example, enriched uranium is, you cannot control it. And unfortunately, the Iranians were not very open-minded. They played some sort of hide and seek, and it was not easy always for the inspectors to catch the places where uranium has been hidden and has been enriched. Nevertheless, I think they are experienced controllers since many years, and they know also the Iranian way how to deal with these issues. So I think it was overall effective, but of course not 100%. Nobody could imagine that. For the future, I think it would be an important contribution towards peace and stability in the region. And I think any agreement, peace agreement, any settlement with Iran must include a strong, and I would say a stronger position for the Atomic Energy Agency, because otherwise we will have a repetition of what we have. Mistrust on the one hand, mistrust also on the other hand. On the Iranian side, Israel will start again with criticism that there is no real control. So yes, I think it's one vital element of any agreement must be a strong, and I would say a stronger role than in the past for the International Atomic Energy Agency.
Yeah, very insightful, very insightful. And one of the most important Austrian assets in the Middle East comes from the energy sector, as we know, through the company OMV. I'm not quite sure what OMV stands for, but I guess we will know now. But OMV has long-term oil and gas projects in the Middle East, and particularly in the United Arab Emirates. And what would be Austria's response in case Iran attacks these assets? Because a lot of bad things are going on now with the assets of numerous countries.
Well, to the first question, OMV, it was originally ÖMV, which meant Austrian Mineral Oil Company. Now it is called OMV, which means Organization with Responsibility, which is some sort of a name to change and to be easily spelled by foreigners. Yes, OMV is very much engaged in the region, in cooperation since many decades already with the Emirates and different companies in the region. Basically, today it is more on petrochemicals, and it is on the question of hydrogen, producing hydrogen. But still, of course, there's also the oil and gas sector. Now, I think as any other country and company, if there's a war and there are damages, there's nobody to pay for it, because I don't think that there's an insurance who would cover these kind of damages. So we hope that out of other reasons that the war is soon over, which for the moment does not appear so. But until now, the damages are limited, and we hope that this will continue. So the damage is not the one directly on the company and its resources, but the overall damage for the economy. But I think we will talk about that later.
Yes, very interesting, very interesting. And turning on to our third question, how do you think this crisis around Iran affects the economic and energy situation in Europe, particularly in Austria? And what more can we expect?
Well, the damages are already here, and they are on a different level. Of course, one is the energy price, which is rising, and of course, which is damaging the hope for recovery. We all in Europe have very low growth, or most of our countries, especially also Austria, zero growth or even below. And we were in the beginning of an upswing, which could be endangered now because of that crisis. So that is one element. The second element is inflation, because high energy prices will contribute to inflation. We know from the past years that inflation is for many people a sign of insecurity. And at least in the past, many people who were affected by inflation, in real terms, but also psychologically, they voted anti-European nationalistic parties. So for Europe as a whole, it's also the danger that there will be this reorientation or this less support for the European Union as such. Maybe in this case, there will be some thinking and people will say, okay, we have a common Europe, it is more defending our interests than individual states. But you never know, because the reaction of citizens are very often emotionally, and they may vote for parties who say, let's close the borders, because also on the refugee issues, it could be that refugee would come again towards Europe, as it was especially with Syria. We have not only Iran, we have also Lebanon. Until now, there is no big flow of refugees, and the very fragile agreement of the European Union on migration and asylum is more severe towards coming of refugees from the outside. So also this may endanger stability in European Union. So overall, it's not only an economic issue, there's a political issue. And in combination, of course, also with some threats from America, especially from President Trump, that Europe is not supporting the attack against Iran, is not supporting the measures to open the Strait of Hormuz for the passing by of tankers. It creates a lot of insecurity, also with some different answers from different countries. So it will need a lot of determination from the European Commission, from the European authorities, and also from the national government to say this is a crisis we didn't start, we didn't contribute. We have to cover and prevent as much as possible negative effects, but it is impossible to keep out all the negative effects. The one immediate one is inflation because of higher prices for oil and gas, maybe also some rationing if we don't have enough amount and quantity. So yes, it's a big challenge for the European Union and Austria specifically.
Yes, maybe a little bit of a follow-up question on migrants, particularly. The crises in the Middle East, they often triggered migration, and Europe was the one who was getting a lot of pressure out of that. Do you think that this can trigger a big wave of migration, and which countries could be affected by that the most among European countries?
Well, it can. For the moment, it's not visible already, because for Iranians, it would be basically Turkey, and Turkey is more or less closing the borders because Turkey is also not very happy about receiving too many migrants. But from Lebanon, it could be different. And the way would be normally not directly via the sea, especially if Turkey is not opening its borders. So it could be again in the direction of Libya, Tunisia, and from the south, and that would affect mostly, of course, first and predominantly Italy. Maybe also Greece, coming from Lebanon, Cyprus, Malta also could be affected. So the countries close to the Mediterranean, to the eastern Mediterranean, would be the countries mostly affected. But until now, we don't see too much, but it could be.
But so you do not see in the future the scenario where even if migrants came to European countries would take some serious action in, taking them and integrating them for the long term. It would be something more like a temporary stationing.
Well, of course, we have migrants from all these countries, especially also from Iran. And in the past, we even invited Iranian, we have doctors, we have scientists, different economists, and so on. But it's not a big mass from Iran and Lebanon. And what we see is, of course, a very restrictive migration policy because of the very strong flows from migration, especially from Syria and also from Africa. It's not only migrants who were fleeing civil wars and economic and ecological disaster. It was part of the migration is also looking for a better life, understandable. But this created some sort of an animosity with many of our citizens, saying there are too many of them and our children don't have a future, and especially with limited or even zero economic growth, this supported, of course, that kind of attitude. So I think, of course, in this case, it will be not a policy of open borders. The issue, of course, is the Commission already increased the money going for individual or help and aid, but we don't have many places in the neighborhood of the crisis to receive refugees, because in former times, for Syria, for example, we had many places in Lebanon, even if the spending went down after some years. But there's no reason and no idea to build refugee camps in Lebanon now because the war is itself there. So in all the countries around, there is no eagerness and possibility to create refugee camps or to receive refugees. So the only way where you really could go is more or less Europe, and that also will be blocked very much.
Understood. Dr. Swoboda, thank you for sharing your substantial insights with us today. It has significantly expanded the understanding of Austria's and European perspective on the current crisis. We hope to see you again in future. And to our audience, thank you. To our audience, I would like to thank you for joining Crescent Research Center's expert interview series. Stay with us for more interesting discussions. Thank you and goodbye.